Ed. Thank you so much for joining us, Dev. You've definitely been a huge support system, not just throughout today, but actually with the build up to the summit. I know Ed was constantly reaching out to you on different things that we weren't sure about. Ed and I, checking up with you, and you were always so quick to respond, so quick to give feedback and help us with, putting this event together. So I 100% appreciate that. And I'm so happy to have you on this. I connected with you less than a month ago, I believe, and I'm just glad to see how this connection is going to grow. So thank you so much. I'll just make a disclaimer, to the live audience. If you have any questions for Dev as I have this conversation with him, as we've been doing, please leave the comments leave the question in the comment box, and I'll pause my conversation and ask Dev that question. So Dev, I think it's time for us to get right into it. So please tell us more about, tell us generally about yourself, who you are, and what you do.
Well, first of all, Amy, Sante Sana, thank you very much for putting this event on. Thank you to Ed for putting this event on, and also thank you very much for your kind comments. I don't think I've done anything too much, so there's no need to refer to me. Everyone has pulled together as a team, and you guys have done a tremendous job to put this summit together at short notice and to try and do it for the greater good. I know that you managed to get Common Goal as your social impact partner as well, which is massive. So again, huge kudos to you guys for doing so, and I hope that people from around the world listening and watching have been enjoying the day. Please, I apologize if everyone turns off now that I'm here, but hopefully they'll come back soon enough.
No, to happen. You like comment of someone welcoming you and saying looking forward to it. So definitely more people joining. Don't worry.
Well, listen, it's a pleasure to be here, and for those that don't know me, I am but a small and insignificant lawyer in the sports industry, but I hope that my story can be of some interest and inspiration to the people that are out there. My name is Dev Kumar Parmar. I'm born and raised in London, England, of East African parentage. My journey into sports law was, like many of the people that have spoken today, not necessarily a linear upward trajectory. I had a lot of challenges to overcome. I had a number of setbacks, innumerate setbacks, if one can put it that way. And I'm blessed to be able to say I'm still here. So of course we'll unpick certain parts of that story more in detail as and when you desire. But for now, I'm in a wonderful position to be the principal director of my own sports law practice, which has bases both in UK and in Spain. I'm also the academic director at, I know it's been mentioned a few times here, but Instituto Superior de Derecho y Economía, ISDE, which is a global leader in sports law and sports management education. So having studied there, I was invited to come back and be a professor, and then now I direct the English speaking masters there. I'm also in a very grateful position to be the legal and governance director of the British Volleyball Federation. However, above and beyond all of that, I'm just a guy that likes sport. And I like doing whatever I can to support sport at whatever level I can see it. So that's me in a nutshell. And let your questions begin.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That was a brilliant, introduction. There's so many moving parts. I think one thing the viewers who have been here throughout the day will realize is that I just love this spirit of sports people, because so many people are doing so many different things, with you and the sports business school and your own organization. And, on a governance side, there's so much that you're doing, which we're going to unpack as we speak. So I'm just going to start off with, your general story and how you got into I really want to link, this has been a huge theme today, people talking about linking different career paths or starting somewhere and transitioning into sport. So can you please tell us more with the details, the challenges and the overcoming of how you actually got into sport?
Well, a lot of people have told you stories about what they were like at school, and I wasn't the best at school. either.
Mhm.
I wasn't the best student at school, and I think it was Alistair who was talking about it earlier, where he recalled the story of his teacher when he was looking out of the window and his teacher asked him whether he'd prefer to be outside. That's something that I can resonate with to a great
Mhm.
extent, because ultimately at school there were certain things that I liked doing and I put my all into them, and that mainly revolved around sports and a couple of other academic subjects.
Mhm.
But generally, I would say I was an above average intelligent kid, but a
Mhm.
below average student, if one
Mhm.
can put it that way. And I try and say that with objectivity, not arrogance. I hope that comes across
Yes,
in
yeah.
in the most pure way. Um, I didn't quite find myself fitting into the system, and I did have those instances which are almost cliche, where I was
Mhm.
told at school that I wouldn't amount to much more, or I wouldn't
Yeah.
be able to go to university. Um, and I went to university, and then I was told at university that I wouldn't be able to progress in my career or to go to the bar. And then I went to the bar, and then I was told at the bar that I wouldn't be able to last there, and I lasted there. So I think my mindset was, when I was younger, it was focused around proving people wrong.
Mhm.
Um, when I started to mature a little bit more, it was more about just doing what's right for me and following my passion, um, and trying to indulge myself in what I thought was something that I could enjoy and give myself to entirely.
Mhm.
So that's basically how it went, without going into too many unnecessary details.
Mhm.
Uh, but the one thing that underpinned my whole journey was my love for sport. And I always knew when I was younger that I wanted to get into sport, and I didn't quite understand how that would manifest itself at the time.
Mhm.
I went to do a law degree, and I qualified, and I was in a blessed position to be able to work in practice over in the UK for a period. But
Mhm.
I always knew that I wanted to get into sport, and I guess my idea when I was a trainee lawyer was I wanted to be a lawyer for football players,
Mhm.
but I never really understood what that encompassed
Mhm.
or what it meant. And I'd heard of some mythical creatures who were doing these things. They were practicing in sports, and they were also working in normal law, if we can call it that way. But I never had any access to them, so I simply knocked on doors.
Mhm.
I simply knocked on doors. Ed said earlier in one of his interviews, he said he doesn't like the term cold calling, but I did a lot of cold calling, a lot of cold
Mhm.
emailing, a lot of cold knocking on doors physically,
Mhm.
um, and politely but relentlessly invited people to share a bit of time with me and to explain how the industry worked.
Mhm.
And I guess I basically sourced my own mentors. I know Lucy mentioned earlier in her interview that she doesn't believe wholly in the concept of a mentor mentee. It's more a collaborator. And I agree with that. But I guess at that stage, I did source mentors to learn how it works and to build my own pathway with regards to how I can get myself into to working with said football players.
Mhm.
Um, slowly, I found myself in a position where I was able to provide some pro bono guidance to a football player. This is now going back probably 9 years ago. I can't even remember. Um, where after we had dealt with his other case,
Mhm.
we had a bit of time left in the conference, and he asked me if I would help him with his contract between him and his football agent. And I
Mhm.
thought, well, it's a contract. I'm a lawyer. This shouldn't be too difficult. Let's
Yeah.
have a look. So I looked at it. It was rubbish. So we got it ripped up, and after that, I was very grateful that he told all of his friends about me, and I guess that was the catalyst to
Mm-hmm.
really get things kicked off. And again, I'm in a wonderful position now. I'm exactly where I wanted to be a few years ago, and I'm exactly where I would never have imagined I would have been 15
Yeah.
years ago.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to say that I can do this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So yeah, it's been a journey with a lot of ups and downs, but I've done my best to wake up every day and enjoy the game.
Yeah. No, it's really good to know, how you got into it and specifically the sports law side. And I just want to dive deeper into that because I know a lot of people listening here are on some path of, maybe they're at some place relating to your journey. Maybe, they started their own sports law organization. Maybe they're at the beginning where they're maybe doing their law school exams and, they want to transition. So it's really good to see how you ended up, finding that opportunity using the player in order to understand sports and see that contract and see an opportunity there. But I want to talk more about, well, this could sort of also be an entrepreneurship side and that switch towards deciding, to set up your own law firm, what that looked like specifically working in sports. You can tell us, actually, you can share with the audience more about your own law firm, what you do, what you specialize in, and what kind of a journey that's been for you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll very briefly encapsulate it because I really don't want this to be a sales pitch for the company. You know, I want to try and help you guys out as much as possible, but we cover we cover work ranging from assisting drafting contracts for players or agents or clubs, right through to dealing with a dispute, be it at before the Football Association in England or several other football associations. We're in a good position where in our company we've got a multilingual set of colleagues
Mm-hmm.
with the ability to practice in different jurisdictions. So sometimes we appear before different football associations or different tribunals, and we're also in a good position where we do quite a lot of work in front of the Court of Arbitration for Sport, which is based has its main seat in Lausanne in Switzerland. So
Mm-hmm.
it can go right through from just having a chat with someone, giving them a bit of legal guidance or an opinion, as well as some strategic guidance because we're in we're in the we're in the situation where we know and we understand the sector, right through to having to represent them in a case in an adversarial trial. Um, but with regards to my own company,
Mm-hmm.
uh, yes, you're correct. There was an entrepreneurial aspect behind it where I wanted to set something up and live and die by my own sword, if one can
Mm-hmm.
put it that way. Um, but I also did that because, and this can sound in equal parts revolutionary, in equal parts idiotic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I didn't like the way I had experienced uh, law firms.
Yeah.
I didn't like the way that they worked. I didn't like the way they ran their processes. I didn't like the way they monetized things that I didn't think should be monetized.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so I decided to set things up on my own, do things my way. And as I said, some people think that I'm crazy, and that's fine. I respect that. I end up doing a lot of pro bono work, a lot of charity support work,
Mm-hmm.
but I prefer to do it that way rather than to charge everybody for every single email or WhatsApp message they send me. And that's
Mm-hmm.
the way we've built our practice. That's our philosophy. All of the people that work with me buy into that, and we've been growing every single year. So I can't be more thankful.
Yeah. No, I think with what you've done, there's definitely a lot of there's components of you definitely that have carried you towards, achieving that. And I just want to talk about the skill set, because that's been a theme for today, not just development of the industry, but self-development as well. So I just want to ask you a bit about, in your journey in setting up your own law firm, in working in other law firms, how what skills do you have, one skill set that has actually, helped you develop into who you are today, and what skill is it that supported your growth?
To select one is a real challenge. I saw Javi Bove earlier. He turned it around and said, "I'm going to give you four."
Yeah.
So I see that precedent has been set, and I don't think I'm going to limit myself to just one, Amy. But um, I think Alistair was saying earlier that, and forgive me if it wasn't Alistair, but someone was saying that confidence is a skill.
Yes.
And I don't disagree, because I think confidence is something that has to be honed and subsequently channeled in the right way, whilst also taking into account context, because at times, if not done so in the most appropriate manner, it can come across as arrogance. It can come across as cockiness. It can come across as someone being frivolous. So I think achieving confidence in who you are and what you're doing and how you're going to do it is something that took me a while. I was always, even as a kid, I was always fairly open and extroverted. But again, this is something that still has to be taken and coached in the right way. And I was very fortunate that I had people at my educational institutions that did believe in me. I mentioned earlier that there were people that put me down, and those that put me down did so in possibly the most horrendous ways you could imagine, verbally. But then I was also blessed to have people that really believed in what I could do, right from high school, university, bar school, and that helped me to develop my confidence, to realize my own self-worth, where I add value in both a personal and a professional environment, and where to draw the line with people that frankly want to take undue advantage.
Yeah.
So I think confidence, and then I've said it when Ed very kindly invited me to be an interviewee on his podcast about a year ago now. Perseverance, because the biggest thing I've had to do is to keep picking myself up, and that's one of the most challenging things you're ever going to do in your life. When you fall, learning how to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and carry on. So I think just persevering and being relentless and fearless in achieving your objectives. And there's still a long way to go for me. I'm still learning. I'm here to learn from Amy. I'm here to learn from you. I'm here to learn from everybody on this summit. But ultimately, I know that I'm not going to let anybody knock me down and keep me there. And I hope that the people listening today, if they haven't already achieved that level of perseverance, then I hope that they're on their way there.
All right. So you gave confidence and perseverance. Are those the two that you want to stick with?
Yeah, well, listen, if people aren't falling asleep, I can go through a list of 20 others, but I think they're the first two that come through to my mind.
Well, that's okay. I just want to challenge you to pivot that, for the viewers, and actually, well, pick one this time, whichever you feel like is more important, or whichever you'd like to go with and speak more about, and just let the viewers know how they can actually use that skill in their daily life. So how can they take up the skill of, what does it look like to, it's easy to say, okay, yeah, you must persevere, but like, you're actually, for example, if you take perseverance, you're actually in a tough time. What does it look like to pick yourself up from there?
That's a tremendous question, Amy. And you've hit the nail on the head, because it's easy to come on to a webinar like this and just to say the right things.
Mm-hmm.
But as a lot of my students will know, they've heard me say it in class, we try to avoid guff and we try and get straight to the point in the most practical sense possible. So how does that work? Well, Alistair gave a wonderful example about when he was being invited in assembly,
Mm-hmm.
which would effectively, in other jurisdictions, they may call it different things, but effectively the weekly or the regular congregation of all the students in front of the headmaster or the headmistress,
Mm-hmm.
where he would be invited to read out the sporting results
Mm-hmm.
in front of all of his peers, hundreds or thousands of them. And it takes courage
Mm-hmm.
to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a level of courage which is, in my view, very similar to the courage that you would need to walk out into a stadium or to stand in front of a TV screen and give a newscast. It's a level of courage that is stable, is consistent, but you need to build it up in
Mm-hmm.
whichever way you possibly can. So if it means standing up in front of your school and giving a report, or if it means going out on the street and breaking out into song, whatever it may be, uh, there's something that you've got to do to push yourself over the barrier or
Mm-hmm.
around the corner that is blocking you in order for you to be able to achieve that target. And once you've got that courage, again, like anything, with practice, it can be honed, it can be mastered, and it can be
Mm-hmm.
used in a way that can be advantageous towards you.
Yeah.
So I think that's that's a combination of both confidence and perseverance, because ultimately there are going to be numerous occasions where you do put yourself out there and for whatever reason you don't achieve the desired results, and
Mm-hmm.
that's happened to me more times than I can count. But perseverance is simply about not holding on to your failure for too
Mm-hmm.
long, not letting it be of detriment to you,
Mm-hmm.
learning from it,
Okay.
cleaning the slate, and moving on as quickly as you can.
Mm-hmm.
Some people may be able to snap out of a failure like that
Mm-hmm.
and get on with life. Some people may need a few days or even a few weeks, but
Yeah.
ultimately you've got to do it at your pace, but you've got to make sure that you snap out of it. So if it means that you're sending off emails trying to get jobs and
Mm-hmm.
you're getting kickbacks, as soon as you get that kickback, soak in your disappointment, because everyone's going to get disappointed in that situation. Soak in your disappointment, understand why it's happened, get over it, and then just move on. Because the longer you carry on to that kind of negativity, the longer you wear yourself down and the
Yeah.
more you take yourself out of the race.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is a race here. You are playing for success, and
Yeah.
there are a lot of other people out there that want that same success. So you've got to pick yourself up as quickly as possible, in
Yeah.
my humble opinion.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Thank you for that. I just want to say actually that there's great comments that have been coming in as you speak. I think you've got a couple of people who know you. Someone said you're looking good, so that's fantastic. Uh,
That's probably my mum. No, she's
so
not on this. I don't think she's on. I don't think she's on Facebook. But
yeah, you've also someone who must be your mentee saying, you're such an inspiration. You've got someone, I'm assuming from Spain, joining you with a nice comment saying hi. Yeah, and Tijana, who's been with us for quite a while, has
Diana,
said,
good to see
yeah,
you, and a
yeah,
wonderful comment from Anna. Thank you very much.
yeah. And I think there's one more that's just come in. Thanks, Deb. Always a pleasure to hear your wisdom. I must say, I am
Oh,
happy
Kiro Jamba, we need to speak. I owe you a phone call.
Yeah, so this is fantastic. It seems like you're definitely on the right track. You're making this very easy. You've got amazing people who are loving to engage with you. And I just want to I just want to talk about in terms of the education, which is the third thing that you mentioned you do, we've spoken about, your own practice and getting into sports, but I just want to touch a bit on education because that's also a theme that's recurring today. That's what we're doing here.
Yeah.
And I just want to know what you think the role of education is toward development in the sports industry.
Education's paramount. And Amy, you've heard me say this before. Okiro's heard me say it before. She just made a lovely comment. Without education, particularly in a sector that is growing and is bubbling at the moment, from all perspectives, from the perspective of development right through to commercialization thereof. Without the education, we are not, as individuals or collectively, in a position to be able to plot out the future, because sport does often live in a bit of a bubble, and people within sport often live in a bubble. Now, that's not a criticism. That's just an observation of how things work in reality. It's because of the emotions that sport evokes within people. Real estate and construction and these types of sectors, they don't evoke the same emotion as sport. So in order to commercialize sport in the most effective way and to understand and appreciate how all of the individuals within the community can play their part, we need to have education. We need to be able to fully appreciate how the sector has been, in which direction the sector is moving, as well as all of the local and regional contexts surrounding. So I'm a big believer in education. I know that may come across as a bit of a paradox because I did say I wasn't the best at school. I did subsequently pick myself up and do quite a lot of higher education, and I'm in an academic institution right now, which to a certain extent I'm the face of. So I say these things because of my experiences. Of course, I have an inherent bias because I've gone through a certain pathway. So you and everyone listening would have to take these comments in the most objective way possible. But for me, the educational aspect is the founding stone. Without that, everything is a house of cards. That's my view. We need that, and once that is there and it's firmly in place, we can build upon it with aplomb.
Fantastic. I think definitely your opinion it's definitely resonating with me, and not just with me. You've got your someone just said is the gang here, so you've got definitely supporters from your educational institutes, which shows that you're actually doing a great job in that sector, despite mentioning that it wasn't. So clearly you've pivoted and changed that. There's also this great comment that's just up on the screen now that this is someone
vouching. Thanks, Susanna.
Something like this, yeah. Oh, and they just keep coming. Someone else says it as well.
Hola, Pablo. This is all going to make me cry, Amy.
It's fantastic. I think
and
it's actually.
And as Alice just said, vulnerability is an important trait.
Exactly. Go ahead and cry. It's okay. No, I think it's definitely an ideal time to speak a bit about mentorship because you did listen to my conversation with Lucy before, and you've got all these wonderful mentees of yours coming here. I think I would definitely love to hear from you your perception about mentorship and how that plays a role in development and the mentee-mentor relationship and all that. Please share with us about that.
Well, I really liked what Lucy was saying in the conversation that you had with her. I think it was around UK time, about 12 o'clock, more or less. Yeah. It was about 5-6 hours ago. And great tenacity by yourself, Amy. You're still here. You're still energetic. So big respect to you in that sense. But what Lucy said was fascinating because I completely and utterly agree with her. And it's something that I've always felt inside without ever really being able to collect my feelings and articulate them in words. because I do firmly believe that there's a learning in everything and with everybody. I say this to my students at Eastday or wherever I go when I'm very humbly invited to go and speak at other institutions. That it's not just me walking into a classroom or a lecture hall there to dictate to everybody what is and what isn't. I'm still learning. I'm still developing. I'll tell you what I know, what my experiences are, what I've learned, what I've practiced. But I need you guys to tell me your thoughts as well. And I've been I've been in the position of being a professional mentor now for well over a decade, probably about 13 years. I do a lot of mentoring with one of my alumni institutions, City University in London. And through the institution, I take on 2 or 3 mentees every single year. Paolo very kindly mentioned that I'm on the Law and Sport Mentoring Scheme. We've got the Eastday Mentoring Scheme and many others. And I've always seen it as a point of me telling my mentee what I've done, the channels that I've followed, the pitfalls that I've had to jump over, and the challenges that I've had to overcome, in the hope that they can learn from some of those vicariously, and that they can, to a certain extent, avoid the mistakes that I've made, so as to expedite their own pathway. I don't have all the answers. I certainly don't have all the answers. And frankly, no one has all of the answers. But if I can give you a bit of insight in relation to what I've gone through, and if it can be of any assistance or benefit to you in your own journey, then so be it. And I guess that's how I've done it. Yeah. And I'm very grateful to hear that people, recent mentees and more mentees from the more distant past, have appreciated my approach.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the the good comments are still coming in, Dev. I think you've got an incredible fan base here. We've just got one comment that's come in, complimenting you. So
this has gone from being an interview about sport development and peace to an episode of This Is My Life. It looks like you've got all of these people coming along just to soothsay me.
But definitely,
Kyron, I'll pay you later.
I want to actually shift more towards, obviously, to the viewers, everyone here, we're doing this because today's the International Day of Sport for Development and Peace. And I just want to talk about, the global perspective. I know, Dev, that, you've mentioned to me before that, you're of East African background and you are familiar with, how sports runs here in Kenya, and you have some global perspective. So I just want to ask about, your opinion in regards to the importance of sports development and peace on a global scale.
Oh, listen, sport development is imperative. Okay, it's absolutely imperative. Now, I'm a big fan of a lawyer from the previous generation in England, a barrister called Edward Grayson. I believe Ed will know who he is. He's written several wonderful books. And he was also the president of the British Association of Sport and Law. And Mr. Grayson had said at one point, and it's a quote that I've used in some of my classes before, but about 30 odd years ago, Grayson said that the rule of law and sport is as essential for civilization as the rule of law in society generally. And without the rule of law in sport, anarchy would reign. And without it in sport, chaos would exist. Now, this is something that has parallels with sport development now, because everything intertwines with each other. It goes hand into hand. Now, if we look at sport historically, sport was based on the Corinthian values, and the Corinthian values were that sport was effectively a leisure activity, and that leisure activity was something that was based on fair play, on the self-discipline of the individual, on health and education. Now, sport has fundamentally developed over the last few centuries, and even more so in the last few decades. So all of these principles that are societal principles underpin sport. It's only naturally, only follows that the development of sport is going to have a wider impact than just on the court or just on the pitch, just on the field of play. Particularly in this moment where we're all living through a situation which our generation has never experienced before, and God willing, never experiences again. We can see that there are communities and sectors pulling together to try and assist those in more need. So I think now more than ever, sports development is absolutely imperative. And it's only right that we shine a light on what's going on at the grassroots, because there's so much being said about elite sports, rightly or wrongly right now. But we must never forget that 95% of the sports sector, and please don't quote me on that figure, but I'm just trying to give you a gauge, 95% of the sports sector worldwide is based on the people like Muhammad in Nairobi, who are working with kids in after school groups. People like Sabrina Bujubasic, who you interviewed earlier, who now, of course, is the CEO of a massive European football club. But prior to that, was someone that volunteered, set up her own football team, and tried to bring a community together. We cannot forget what's going on, and sport development helps to keep us active, helps to keep us engaged, and helps to keep us ready for life as it comes.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And actually, I think I want to broaden that a little bit, if you don't mind. I know you joined a conversation that I was having with Beverly last month, about integrity
Yes.
in sport, and you had a lot to share, specifically linking, to the African sports industry, and the role that integrity actually has to play in terms of development. Do you have anything that you actually want to share in terms of, integrity being a huge part of sports development?
No, well, it was great to speak to you and Beverly. It was literally only a month ago, wasn't it? Which it feels like a lot longer. Beverly and I first met in Nairobi in December, so about 6 months ago. And it was great to hear your views, both of the opinions that you were sharing on that webinar. And I think integrity is, again, something that underpins everything that we're talking about in relation to sport. Now, from a purist perspective, integrity and fair play, again, some of the Corinthian principles that we talk about, these are things that idealize how sport should be. Unfortunately, we know that this is not always the case. Sport used to be focused on the participation therein rather than the result thereof. Things have fundamentally changed for several reasons, but the reality is that things have changed, and with that, with the necessity to win at all costs, integrity has been stretched and questioned. Sometimes it's stretched by potential financial gain. Sometimes it's stretched by other factors. But ultimately, without a comfortable degree of integrity within sport, it's difficult to be able to sell, for want of a better word, the ideology of a positive pathway to a 10-year-old boy or girl that sport is the way forward. It does just become, on the face of it, that leisure activity that you do after school or after work. And it completely and utterly berates the entire commercialized industry that we've got right now. So in my view, integrity is imperative. I think that integrity issues are sometimes unfairly highlighted in developing countries in Africa, in South America, and Asia, because we have integrity issues of different kinds everywhere.
Mhm.
Um, but all in all, the vast majority of people that I've had the opportunity to come across directly or vicariously do try and do things in the right way.
Mhm.
So hopefully that majority is maintained.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's still obviously some more great comments coming about you. I think we can just highlight, Emmanuel has said that you're an amazing role model, on always humble and help out. That's
Thank you,
fantastic.
Emmanuel.
And Brian as well, definitely an inspiration. You are just sharing more about that. But moving to the next one, actually,
It's a pleasure, Brian. Pleasure.
yeah. Siman has actually highlighted a great question, because I was actually leading towards talking about this. So, he's saying you're fantastic, but he's also asking what your take on the future of sport, arising the massive disruption caused by COVID-19. And just before that, actually, I want to ask about yourself personally before we talk about the global impact. I want to talk about you, Dev. How is it affecting you on a personal level, despite we know the industry has been affected as a whole, but how are you doing?
Sure.
How is it affecting you, and how is it affecting business as usual?
Okay. Well, thank you, Saman, for your question, and we'll come to that, and your comment, and we'll come to that very shortly. When Amy, the boss, gives me leave to answer your question, but I'll answer Amy's first. Um, from a business perspective, and again, I don't want to focus too much on the company, but from a business perspective, it's been business as usual.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we're very blessed. It's been even more business than usual, if we can put it that way. There's been
Mm-hmm.
a lot of inquiries in relation
Mm-hmm.
to the impact of this current situation,
Yeah.
from players, from clubs, from agents, from federations.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, we're all hands on deck,
Mm-hmm.
everybody at the company, and we're very grateful for that. From
Yeah.
a personal perspective, it's been incredible, because those who have had more exposure to me over the past however many years will know that I tend to spend most of my life on an aeroplane. Um, and sometimes that sounds glamorous, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's draining.
Mm-hmm.
It's tiring, and it's not something that I enjoy doing. But I do it for 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 the work. I do it because I've always believed it necessary. But I was speaking to my missus the other day, who's just in the other room working as well. And we calculated that I've now been uh, flight free for nearly 3 months, and this is my longest flight free period since 2011, if I'm
That's
not mistaken. Because on average, I'd be flying out pretty much every week.
mm-hmm.
So in that sense, I've actually found myself to be able to develop more of a routine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm less defatigated. Uh, I'm still getting all of my work done, and I believe I'm getting all of my work done with the same level of efficiency. So in that sense, I guess I've been in a very lucky position. But I always knew that that level of relentlessness with the way I worked was not sustainable. So
Mm-hmm.
frankly, I think that this enforced opportunity
Mm-hmm.
to kick back will change the way that I personally work
Yeah.
moving forward. It's given me a lot of time to spend with my family,
Mm-hmm.
and again, it's been a blessing. And again, I was saying to my missus the other day that I've said to her many times over the last few years, I
Mm-hmm.
wish I could just calm down for a couple of weeks, just relax, and then I could start to rebuild myself. I want to do more continuing professional development. I want to make sure that I'm not as tired all the time, and because of this terrible situation, which we mustn't make light of at all,
Yeah.
but because of this terrible situation, I and many others now find ourselves in a position that, frankly, 6 months ago we would have killed for, to
Yeah.
just be stuck at home and not have to go about doing anything. So,
Yeah.
whilst being respectful to what is going on out there, I guess use this time wisely. Keep
Mm-hmm.
yourself safe. Keep yourself distant from others physically. Respect people's boundaries, but also use this time to maximize the internet, to maximize social networks, to develop yourself, to
Mm-hmm.
read some books. Ed says the most simple but the most poignant thing. Uh, this generation now is used to reading PDFs and articles on a smartphone. Pick up a book. Go do what you need to do to upskill yourself. So I mean it's impacted me in a very positive way. That's my take on it.
No, I'm glad. Actually, that's been a thing with all the speakers today. I really like the positivity and a lot of opportunity. It's one thing to focus on the negative situation that's happening, but it's also beautiful to see that a lot of people are focusing on the opportunity that arises with it. And it's very interesting to have that different perspective, because I know Lucy was sharing earlier how that's completely stopped a lot of her projects. And it's very interesting to see that it's the same industry, it's the same sports industry, but you're actually having more business, whereas someone in the same
Yeah.
sports industry is having less business. So it's very interesting to see, what roles everyone plays in this specific sector. Now, just going back to the question of, which was more general in terms of the situation, the question that
Yeah.
Siman was asking was, what is your
Could you
take?
kindly post it up? Yes, there it is.
Yeah, what is your take on the future of sport arising out of the massive disruption caused by COVID-19?
Simon, I think that's a very good question. And there are a lot of people that are making comments in relation to this. Many of my peers in the sports law sector have drafted articles and discussed in great detail their predictions and their justification for their predictions with regards to what the next steps are. But I'll encapsulate it in a very brief manner so as not to make this a big legal interview. Uh, more robust contracts. I think that's the biggest takeaway that we're going to have from here, because, and this is again, it's jurisdiction dependent, because we've been in a position where we've worked with clients from the States, for example, and the way legal contracts are drafted in America is completely different to the way they'll be drafted right across in Spain.
Yeah.
And then the UK would be in the middle. And then if we go to the former Commonwealth countries, like in East Africa, where the contracts are rigorous, they're almost states like. So these statements that I make are jurisdictionally dependent. However, I think we will find that sometimes this ignorance in relation to things that would just never happen will disappear, and people will realize that we are not infallible, and from a legal perspective we have to be cautious and appropriately protect ourselves for situations that we may not reasonably foresee. Most of the football contracts in the UK do not have provision for what's going on right now.
Yep.
They do not have provision for it.
Yeah.
And many of the football contracts that we would have come across the world do not have provision for it. So if there's one very simple takeaway, then I would say more robust contracts. But of course, Siman, and if anybody else wants to go further and discuss this in more detail, or spar about their opinions in more detail, then I'll be more than happy to do so after this webinar.
Definitely. Great. So there's actually another question that's come in. I think Rego is, we'll just pop it up. There we go. So, this is specifically must be from an perspective. You
But
can
away
see it.
go.
Yeah. How can we as Africans control our sports industry, as in controlling our narrative and the outcome we expect?
Well, I think Ruego, this is a governance question, and it's a very good question. I've been watching the questions coming in from participants throughout the day, and there have been some really high quality questions. So again, kudos to the event that yourself and Ed have put together, and the participants that you've attracted. But it's a governance question, and ultimately, if we break it down, we go right back to the bare bones of governance, and we talk about um, structures and cultures. For those that don't follow governance principles, we'll try and put it together in a very brief, simple uh, sentence. It's easy to change a structure,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now, from a legal perspective, if a federation comes up to us, which sometimes they do, and they ask us to look through their regulations. In fact, I think Amy, I spoke to you about a federation in Kenya when we had a chat, but we did a recent governance project where um, sometimes they ask us to go through their regulations, and what we do is we redraft parts or the entirety of those regulations. And that may take me or one of my colleagues several hours, maybe several days. Yeah. But in the grand scheme of things, that's nothing. So
Mm-hmm.
changing a structure takes very little time.
Mm-hmm.
Changing a culture takes a generation. It's as simple as that. And
Yeah.
there are a lot of challenges that arise when you are trying to push forward that change. A lot of
Yeah.
challenges that arrive culturally. So growing up in a family that identifies itself as East African, I also encountered some of the stereotypes that Amy, maybe you will be able to resonate with, or maybe other people will be able to resonate with, which is go to school, educate yourself. What is
Yep.
sports? Sports is not going to get you anywhere.
Yep.
Uh, Stop wasting your time. Go and become a doctor or a lawyer. And you know, I'm blessed to say that my parents weren't as hardline as maybe some others.
Well, you are a
Um,
lawyer, so that makes it easy for them to accept.
yeah, it made it a bit more easy for them to to handle things. But that type of mentality, and I'm not saying it's wrong or it's right. It's just a mentality. Is a fact. That mentality is a product of their time.
Yeah.
Our mentality is a product of our time, and the future generation is going to have a mentality as a product of their time. Now, I can write regulations right now, but if it contradicts the mentality, which is the
Yeah.
product of our time, it's going to take 5, 10, 15, 20 years until the next generation are born, raised, come into working age, and infiltrate the sector to a level where they can be influencers to be able to then enforce and implement these changes. So I think, Ruego, your question has a very simple answer: better governance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But the reality of that simple answer is we can make all of the changes on paper very quickly. And in fact, we might be doing, Ruego is one of my is their students. We might be doing a governance class. I've got to check the syllabus. So we can implement these things very quickly. But then getting people to buy into it
Mm-hmm.
takes a long period of time. And then comes the integrity issues, and then the politics, and then the dissenters, and things like that. So Africa has got huge potential, and
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely hope that within my lifetime, African sports, from a structural level upwards, uh, gives the shine that I really want it to be, or wanted to have in the public.
Yeah.
But it's not an overnight thing.
Yeah, Dev, I mean, obviously we can talk for ages. I think it's almost, it's been definitely a great conversation. Just before I let, the viewers know how they can interact with you if they'd like to get in touch, which I'm sure they
Oh
will.
bloody hell! I've been yapping away for 50 minutes.
No, this
I'm
is,
sorry.
we had all that time, definitely. That's okay. So I just want to share with you, we have a few comments that have come in just before we wrap up. We've got
Sure.
a comment from the Future Stars Academy, which they just say that they're
Ah,
great. Yeah. So
Alfred Sambo. Okay.
yeah, there you go.
Um,
That's a wonderful
if
message.
I may, I'll briefly make a comment, because one of the things I really wanted to mention, and you had Thomas Priest earlier, who's the co-founder of the common goal movement.
Mhm.
And this is something that I massively believe in, the philosophy that common goal has.
Mhm.
And it's something that I'm very honored to be able to say. Well, I might as well say it. I might as well announce it formally. Um, we are the first sports law and management firm to worldwide to become an official partner of Common Goal.
Mhm.
We joined Common Goal several months ago, and we've been toying with how we're going to make the announcement. But there we are. There's the announcement. So there's an article that I'm going to post in the next 24 hours or so. But the reason why Alfred is here is when we joined Common Goal and we made our donation, I was very kindly invited to select where I would like it to go. And the two things closest to my heart were finding a project in urban London, in an area that, or a similar type of area to where I grew up, or finding a project in a place that would be close to my parents' hearts. And I found the Future Stars Academy, which does amazing work, and it combines the ability to enjoy your football at a high level with quality coaching. But in doing so, you have to be able to get the grades. So it merges football and education at the same time. It's a really wonderful package for the kids, and it's based in a place called Arusha in Tanzania, which Amy, I'm sure you know, is I think it's about 6 or 7 hours drive from Nairobi. And Arusha is about 30 kilometers or 40 kilometers. Alfred, maybe you'll be able to correct me. From a small town called Moshi, which is where my mother was born, and she still pines about returning to. So for me, it was the most wonderful thing where it brought together everything about me. It brought together the ability to go and enjoy football on the basis that I educated myself, which sometimes begrudgingly I did, but I did it nonetheless. And in a place which is very close to where my mom and dad have both physical and emotional ties. I thought there's no better place for me to support. So Alfred, I'm looking forward to seeing you in Tanzania very soon, my friend.
That's fantastic and definitely inspirational. So, Dev, can you please let the viewers know, where they would like to, where they can interact with you if they would like to get in touch with you, email, social media, what should they do?
Oh, I think I'm pretty open, and I think I'm pretty accessible. I like to be anyway.
Yeah.
I do apologize in advance if I can't always respond quickly to everybody, but I endeavor to speak to and assist everyone that reaches out to me. You can get through to me via Twitter at DKP Delta Kilo Papa _official Oscar Foxtrot India Alpha Lima. You can get at me via email, DKP Delta Kilo Papa. Again, are you gonna do you need me to phonetically spell it out, or are you gonna put it all up?
So what we'll do actually is that, for now, I hope they can follow your social media platforms. We've got great
Okay.
content actually with all.
DKP official.
Yeah.
www.palmars-sports.com. My email address is dkp@palmars-sports.com.
Okay.
You can contact me via LinkedIn. I'm not as frequent a user as I should be. So if you do message me on LinkedIn, you may not receive a response for several months. So it's easier to contact me via these other methods. Or alternatively, if you don't have Twitter, LinkedIn, contact Ed or Amy, and I'm sure you'll be kind enough to pass a message through. I'll do whatever I can to answer everyone and help you guys out.
Yeah, if you need Dev's email, feel free to reach out to me or Ed. But now, just as we wrap up, to the live viewers, thank you so much for joining us. I know you guys have been commenting amazingly while Dev was speaking, but if you have any more takeaways that you've learned throughout the session, please feel free to comment them here on Facebook. Let us know what your biggest takeaway with Dev has been. You can take that over to Twitter as well. We've just shared Dev's Twitter handle with you. Take that over to Twitter, and don't forget to use that hashtag of the day, which is hashtag Spirit of Sport. Thank you so much for joining us, Dev. I really appreciate you coming in. This was a fantastic conversation, one of the longest I've had, because it's just so easy to speak naturally with you. I really appreciate it.
No, you're very kind. And again, not only do I thank you, Amy and Ed, for putting this all together, but just a huge shout out and from me at the very least, a round of applause for the efforts that you guys have put in to this whole conference. And of course, I'm wishing that you and all of the viewers and listeners and the participants stay safe during this time, and hopefully we'll all have a chance to meet again when this situation is over.
Definitely. Thank you so much for that, Dev. Have a lovely evening.
Take care. Bye bye.